Thanks for joining. My name is Ben Shelton. I am the project manager for the NC 911 Board Orthoimagery Program. Some of you may have participated in our past projects in this area, but appreciate everybody jumping in and to take a look at our quality review process that we'll be undertaking starting next week, and the tools that we have available to kind of get your input and feedback on imagery products before we deliver it this fall. So with that, we'll jump right in. But alongside me today is John Derry. He's an analyst here at CGIA. He does a lot of the heavy lifting on the imagery program, especially in terms of our quality review process, setting up the tools, configuring it, managing all the user accounts, and that. Elizabeth Daniel on our team is also heavily involved in our review process. You might work with her if you do any of the property mapping. She's very involved in the statewide parcel layer and getting that data product on NC1 map. We appreciate her help through this review process. She's a very integral part to our team for reviewing all this imagery on our end and screening all the calls that everyone makes. So just a quick bit of background about how we got to this point. We have a 4-year imagery collection cycle started in 2024 along the coast. This is the third phase of that 4-phase program, shown in yellow there in the northwest part of the state. It's a big statewide effort. We have multiple state agencies that are involved throughout the process. But the main part is a focus on emergency response data products that then can be used for those critical decision-making steps when it's needed the most. In the end, we do provide all of this for free out on NC1 Map through streaming imagery services and download products for everyone in the state. So it's kind of been the vision of the 911 board since the very beginning is, develop this product with a focus on emergency response and 911, but everyone can benefit from it. In the end, it is taxpayer dollars that fund this, so provide it out to the widest audience possible. The 26 counties here are our project area, and I just wanted to quickly highlight the vendors that are responsible for the different areas. To get all of this imagery collected in the time frame that we have, we take the point of view that we try to get as many companies involved as possible to get as many acquisition systems up in the air during that acquisition season and in the post-processing that is needed to get all of this turned around in such a quick time frame. It might seem like a long time, this project takes to get the imagery in your hands. It's just a massive amount of data that we have to manage and make sure that it's accurate positionally. So there's a really high horizontal accuracy that we try to achieve. Plus, we want it to be free of error and meet all of the different needs that the downstream stakeholders need. So to ensure that, it takes us time from the time that we contract in the fall till the time we deliver, about a year to get this turned around. But highlight to the 5 companies in the top right there. They do a lot of the heavy lifting and the work to create all these imagery products and get the consistent quality that we get every year. And quickly about our acquisition season this year, it was a very difficult flying season for us. If you remember this winter, right about the very beginning of February, right about when we start flying typically, there was a huge snowstorm with over a foot of snow in many parts of the project area, and then a very cold February where that snow did not go anywhere. So frustratingly, we were waiting around for all of the snow to melt and for the ground conditions to be available for us to get the planes in the air and collect. So typically we start around February 1st. This year we were kind of about a month delayed. We didn't get started till February 28th. And the only real clear skies that day were ironically out in the mountains. So that's where we began our acquisition with the finish around March 25th. So we were able to get everything collected, having all the 5 vendors available and able to get those aircraft in the air very quickly allowed us to go ahead and still collect all this with the ground conditions we need. So we need really clear skies and no flooding, no snow cover, all of those different things. So waiting for those snow piles that were in the big commercial parking lots to melt was taking quite a while. So that's why we got a little later start in February than we're typically used to. But this project area, including a lot of the mountains, sometimes goes into April 15th, I think is the latest we've collected. We try to get everything with the leaf off conditions, and the leaves were still not on the trees when we collected in March 25th. So that was great to get that in the can and go into post-processing. Then we go through a lot of different compliance steps to make sure everything was collected with no gaps or voids and meeting all the imagery acquisition specifications. We also do a lot of checks on the color balancing between vendors to make sure that when we get to the quality review process that we're going to detail here today, that there should be no color consistency issues or minimal that would affect. Because as we get to this point, it gets more and more difficult to go ahead and go back in and do those kind of color adjustments. So this is the last step showing here that we undertook after several previous steps, where each company provides us with a streaming imagery service of their preliminary imagery, and we kind of check everything to make sure there's some consistency, clarity, contrast, things like that that we're meeting across the board for the whole project area. We're pretty happy with everything, how it turned out this year, especially with the difficult acquisition season that we had. And then this is, you've probably seen this schedule if you're on my email distribution list. We do the review in 3 groups of counties, with 2 weeks in between. Every county has 4 weeks to review. So that first group of counties will review between July 20th and August 14th. The next group of counties will come online about 2 weeks after that, and then they will have 4 weeks to review. And then the final group there in our delivery order 3 will finish up in September 11th, and we'll begin reviewing all the calls, getting things fixed, and then getting the final products from the imagery providers so that we can package them and get them out to you probably in mid-November to early December is the goal. And with that, I'll kind of turn it over to my coworker, John, and he's going to give a little bit of overview of the calls that we typically find and look for, and of the application interface and the tools that we have available. I think you're on mute. But there you go.
Can you see my screen, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the NV Discover Data Reviewer application. We've been using some sort of online review application for many years. This application allows many of the stakeholders to assist and have a hand in reviewing and improving the imagery that they will receive. This will be the 4th year using this version of this application. So I'm going to do a brief introduction of what this application looks like when you first log in, what we're looking for, and then I'm going to go more in depth on using this application. So when you log in, you're going to see this. You're going to see on the left-hand side the tile inspector, which is a list of the tiles that have been assigned to your county. And then in the middle portion here are the tools that are available that will assist you in reviewing. And on the right-hand side is the map that you will be using to review the imagery. Again, when you log in, this is what you'll see. You'll see the county the tiles that were assigned to you in the list, and then in this location, those tiles visually. And again, the tiles are filtered to what is responsible for you, and in orange is the county boundaries. So for each county, the tiles for the entire project area have been divided up into 3 review groups. 60% of the area will be reviewed, of the entire project area. Of that, 30% DOT reviews those tiles. The county reviews 25%, and CGIA does 5% of the tiles. Since we've been doing this for many years, DOT and CGIA, we have a lot of experience in looking at this imagery. So we tend to take maybe more complicated areas, but the counties will still be getting some very interesting imagery to look at. The imagery you see right now that's in the background is not the imagery you'll be reviewing. This is the 2022 to 2025 imagery that's been cached on NC1 map. This will be a reference layer that you can use when you're reviewing, and that imagery, the current project goes live on July 20th for the first delivery order. So what are we, looking at? What are we trying to find? These image anomalies. There is a review document that you can access, and I'll show you where to access it in the application. This is a very helpful document that you can refer to during the process. Yeah, and so we kind of break anomalies up into three different scopes here. One of them is seamline anomalies. This seam lines represent a boundary between two coinciding images that were brought together to create a final orthophoto. Seam lines are found in areas where seam line has been placed. So this is the kind of stuff we're looking for. A seam line cuts a building, forcing it to lean in two directions. In red is the seam line, and in cyan box, that's the call. And so what's happening here is this building is a little wider, a little more lean. It's, this is an issue. A lot of these, you will see seam lines running through buildings that do not have any sort of anomaly happening because in many cases, the contractors have come in there and cleaned it up post production. So but it's always good to look at these when you're reviewing the imagery. This is the majority of the seam line calls you will see is misaligned roads. The road looks offset. This is not something you would see in real life, but yeah, it's where the seam line has been put down and the roads are just not quite lined up. Again, another example of misaligned road. This is where over a railroad track where the railroad is now warped, looks warped. It's not like that in real life. This is an anomaly that you would make a call on. Then there are elevation anomalies. These are found in areas where the elevation data has either changed or contained an error to begin with. Bridges are an example where elevation data may be valid, but may still cause elevation anomalies. So warped roads, there's not a seam line there. This probably has to do with the elevation, the DEM underneath is incorrect, and that's why the road is warped. Again, a railroad bridge. This is another example. This, in real life, this does not look like the flume ride at Disney World. This is an elevation anomaly. And then again, this is probably a newer build, and the house has been pulled, and the elevation data underneath is probably not quite right. So you find this kind of warping and smearing of the imagery. Again, this is a valid call. Another building warp. This probably has to do with a new retaining wall that's been put up. And you can see the top of the roof is sloping down, and the wall is warping. This is a valid call.
Yeah, in a lot of new construction areas, you'll see things like that, with like what he's showing here with the retaining walls or new buildings, new construction, because the elevation, the LiDAR data that we're using was collected prior to that construction, and now the contractor needs to go back in and edit that elevation to match what's really there now. Otherwise, it's going to push and pull and stretch the imagery in different directions.
Then there are artifacts that are kind of left over from production of the imagery. A black polygon, black rectangle. This is an anomaly. Obscures the data underneath. This is where a seam line has been placed, and the images, the two coinciding images, one, it doesn't have any other imagery in that one spot. So you're going to find this flare. This is an issue that, again, all this stuff that we're looking at, the contractor can fix. So that's why we're identifying it. This kind of weird sort of greenish purple smudge, this year, when this was collected, this was due to the aircraft had a leaky engine and oil was getting onto the camera lens. So it was causing this artifact.
And I will note some of those you will see in woods like that are just blue tarps. We get that a lot. If you have a question about anything, I would always err on the side of make the call, and we will go through screening processes to identify things. But a lot of times it'll be like a blue tarp that looks like that, but it's actually somebody put some tarp over some firewood or something,
Or
and
in our roofs too.
we'll screen it and we'll reject it off of the vendor's lists before it gets to them.
Always, make more calls and you do have a review process, and that's fine. Again, this is, photo editing software artifact. That's an error. Every year we see 1 or 2 tile misplacements, where the XY coordinates are incorrect on the tile edges, and we'll see this kind of thing happening where that tile should be at another location. Sometimes these are hard to see. Yeah, they happen. And features like an airplane obstructing other features, go ahead and make that call. The contractors can use adjoining imagery to fix this. So it is something they can fix. I think we had the vice president's plane one time. Is that
Air Force 2?
Air Force 2, yeah. And here's a tonal issues. We see this green haze. That's an issue, and that can be fixed.
And especially with metal rooftops nowadays, they're so widespread. You'll see, if the sun's at the wrong angle, it'll have a glare on the rooftop. Sometimes those can't be fixed, but we'd rather pass them to the vendors and see if we can get something done, especially when that reflection is doing what this example is showing, where the reflection is causing like the imagery color to kind of bleed out a little bit. If it's just kind of a small reflection, sometimes it can't get fixed, but if it's doing this where the color of the imagery is being impacted, we definitely want to pass that along.
Right. So there are anomalies that are within the project scope. And so we will reject calls such as tree lean. And it creates shadowing on these roads where the road is obscured, but in reality, the only way to fix that is with a chainsaw. And that's not in our scope to do that.
And it's a product of we do leaf off flights in the winter times where shadowing is going to be a little longer. We do have a sun angle specification that they have to meet, 32 degrees or 33 degrees in the Piedmont areas and 38 degrees in the mountain areas to try to reduce some of that shadowing. But sometimes it's just inevitable, especially on that kind of road where it's north of that tree stand, that it's going to have some shadowing. But hopefully, and it should be see-through.
Yeah, I mean, we can see through this, and you can see the road. You can see the road center line for most of this, the length of this shadow. So
we've made extra efforts after some feedback from the last project in this area in 22 to kind of make sure that the contractors were lightening those shadow areas, reducing a little bit of the contrast so you can still see that road edge.
Again, it just, it looks like an anomaly, but it's a tree budding out early.
Especially those Bradford pears, those things are the bane of our existence. They flower out very early.
So misaligned power lines, you'll see a lot of this. And this is an image anomaly. It's not within our project scope. I mean, one of the reasons we're misaligned is that we use bare earth is used for orthorectification, and to align these power lines would take just a lot of effort and a lot of money. And it's just not within the scope of our, and these are elevated features, so they're not on the ground. So this is, there are other features like that too. But yeah, in this instance, we will reject these calls that are made.
Yeah, if it's like a very high cell tower or something, that's typically not in the contract for them to fix very high elevated features. But if the seam line's nearby and they can just move the seam line, sometimes that is kind of fixable, but not on power lines. Power lines, we just can't fix those.
And then it's not within the scope of this project to collect water. And so you'll see a lot of this where imagery was collected at different times, and temporally they're just different. They're going to come across as different. So if we will reject calls made on water features. So getting back to the application, So when you log in, it will typically zoom to this scale. And um, and so so what I typically do when I log in and I'm getting to review the county is I will zoom to that county, take a look. When you look at the table to the left, you will see your image name. These are the tile names. Who's it assigned to or who reviews it? It's the same. The status of it, if it's inspected or passed. How many calls are within the tile? The date that the tile was completed, the county name, who's the vendor, and what we've done for the review process, we've assigned a county of one to all the tiles that we want the counties to review. And the same goes for DOT and CGIA. If you're looking at this list and if you're not seeing ones in here and seeing zeros, then you need to contact us because we need to fix that on our end. But this is typically what the table will look like. So let's just run through sort of what if, a scenario review process. So in this case, I'm going to select this image name, and it's going to zoom to that tile. As you can see to the left, there's a checkbox. You can unselect it by selecting that checkbox or select it and it's still on. When you select the image name, it automatically selects the selection box. So when I move into at a tile scale, I'll typically try to give myself as much room to work with. So I'll push over the table. So I got a lot more space to look at. And then I will zoom on down to where it says the zoom scale here. So about 18, 19. That seems awfully close.
And we typically, when it's a more rural area, it might be 19 to 20 that we review
Yes.
at. There's less infrastructure and features. And then when it's more urban, we go down to the 18.
Sorry. Yeah. Somewhere in there. Edit. Okay. So, and then, start scrolling across using your mouse. You could also use, I think it's the shift arrow. Yeah, that you can also scroll to.
Shift arrow will do 80% zoom, so it's a lot easier to kind of do a typewriter motion.
But the thing I tell people is put in a podcast, put on some headphones, start looking. You can catch up on your recorded books. But anyhow, there are, I'm going to introduce some of the tools here. There are layers that we have, reference layers that you can use to look at railroads, structures. And this structure, it's bridges and stuff like that. There's seam lines. I'll show you that in a minute. The county boundary we covered, and you can turn this on or off. Tile study area to see where you are. And it's going to have other imagery that we could look at. The base layer, those are going to be, I need to fill some of this in, but they're going to be different maps, reference maps you can look at to help you identify. There are certain tools here. The one there's a measure tool. The one I use a lot is the street view. Allows you to select when you're looking at imagery to see if it pops open Google Maps and see if what I'm looking at the ground is in fact, I'm looking at from the ortho images in fact on the ground. This allows you to, I use this quite a bit actually when I'm stumped. So
there's a lot of times we're looking at imagery and it's hard to tell what you're looking at. So any of these, reference layers really helps you kind of identify, okay, what I'm looking at is really just a pipe on the ground or something that needs to be called.
they are, there we go. Slowing down a little. But so one of the things I also do, I use this show hide grid, because if you remember earlier, I showed you a misplaced tile or tile edges aren't met. This is one of the tools you can use to actually look at the tile boundary to see if everything's coinciding. So, and then I'll move down. I'll start scrolling along. And like I said earlier, seam lines are one of those places that you can find errors. So we can use this tool to hide or show seam lines. You can actually zoom on in to see if I am seeing an error, if the seam line is obscuring any anomalies. And say, for instance, there is a problem here where the road has been misplaced. I'll use this square call tool to then make a call. So remember me showing you that document earlier? This is where you find that help document. It'll pop open the document to get, let you look at this information again.
Yeah, it's a little question mark icon or an X or an I icon, like an information.
Information icon. And then here you will make the call. In this case, we're looking at a seam line. There's drop downs for other things like image or elevation, but in this case, it's a seam line. We're going to say misaligned road. That's what it is. You can actually add, if it's something more, some other of the seam lines, not such a big deal, but the image calls, you might have to add a little more context to it. So when you save it, it creates a purple or magenta box that has now become a call. And it created a warning here, and it will update my name, like who actually made that call. So when so we zoom out, we'll see that does it here. This call is now yellow, means there's a warning. It symbolizes it at a scale that we can actually look at it and see where the errors have happened. So let's go back and pan across again. And say if I find another call, I'll make a call. Say this time it's an image, subtype, quality. Right. The image is still going to be yellow. So we make another call. Say we, for instance, make another call. The image now turns red. When that happens, when there's 3 calls on one image, that typically fails the image. So and then when we don't, that happens rarely. But yeah, where 3 calls were made, then an image is failed. So when we're done reviewing that image, we want to hit complete tiles. That image that has been released. So some of you have multiple reviewers in your office, and you can actually assign tiles. If we come down to these actions, you can actually select tiles that you want your different users to look at. And you can actually come down here to actions and assign them. Unfortunately, the list is all the reviewers that are working on the project. So what is there, 100 plus, 120? You're going to have to find those reviewers, but you can then assign them, such as that. And it's going to assign this Chelsea to this tile. And so she can then come back and then make review just those tiles. again, we try to review 60% of the county. If you want to review 40% more, we can actually release those tiles to you, and have you do more work if you wish. And a lot of times, we always have a few counties that actually have every tile reviewed for their entire project. So that's always good. So,
Yeah,
and
we feel like the 60% rule, we do catch most of the major systematic issues, all the major systematic issues, and the majority of the small, minor issues get caught with that 60% review that we try to. But if you would like to add to your review, definitely let us know. We can release the tiles. We do review every bridge, so we do 5% as CGIA, but we also review every single bridge, whether it's in a review tile or not. CGI has a list of bridges, and we kind of go through that at the end to kind of double check to make sure everything that needs, because bridges are one of the major points of errors in our project. So we do some extra review on top of the 60% on our end, just to make sure that high level we're looking at everything.
A lot of those tiles that have bridges, we look at more than just a bridge too. So
yeah.
This scrutiny. Is there any questions? Anybody have any questions about the process?
Yeah, feel free to come off mute or use the chat if you have any questions on this. But the assigned tile, especially, I know there's a few counties that have quite a few users. You can select those tiles with that checkbox on the left, or you can use the select tool, that one of those white icons there in the map. You can just visually select, a groupings of tiles. If there's like a municipality that's doing a review in your county, you can go through and select all the tiles in their boundary to kind of give to them and assign those tiles using that select tool.
I just done here. I've selected these tiles. So I can then go ahead and
you just have to check.
Yeah. Oh yeah, check that, and then I can then assign. You can also export the tiles that are assigned to you as an Excel or as a geodatabase. So and you can look at it in ArcGIS if you want to have another way to look at the data.
Yeah, and even after you review a tile, if there are no calls, you still want to complete that tile, because that will remove it from everybody else's list, and we don't duplicate review. If you've completed a tile, we don't want someone else to have to come back through and complete that same tile. So even if you're not making a call in the tile, you want to make sure you've checked the box next to that tile and hit that complete button each time to kind of check it off, like this one's done, so everybody can focus on the remaining tiles. Thanks for the question, Don. All right. Well, the imagery should be coming live soon. I think it should be up by tomorrow, but we're going to clear out the system tomorrow at noon. So if you've received your credentials and you're in there testing, I've seen some people are in there passing and looking at tiles. All of that is going to be cleaned out and reset by noon tomorrow by NV5. And then we'll have a clean slate to start the review Monday morning when the imagery's ready to go and we've ironed out all the kinks. So definitely feel free to go in there and mess around if you want to test the tools out yourself, and email us if there's any questions. Did you have anything in your workflow, John, that you had left? I didn't mean to interrupt.
Done. I'm done.
Okay. But once you get into it, you'll find that, I think typically we spend about 3 to 5 minutes a tile. We don't spend, you can really get into the weeds and look at this stuff very closely, but if an error isn't kind of really evident right offhand, once you start seeing a few, you'll recognize them very quickly, what needs to be called and what needs to be fixed. The vendors already do their own, what we call level 1 review. So a lot of errors have already been fixed, in the order of magnitude of the thousands of fixes between the seam lines and the elevation issues that we typically find. So a lot of things have already been kind of cleaned up. They should be. And so as we get into the review, hopefully we're just finding the straggling issues out there that we need to kind of fix and find. I think typically in the last few years it's been between like 200 and 500 calls we fix through this review process. So don't feel disheartened if you're not finding something. That's a good thing. We still want to make sure that things are being checked and signed off on. Let me share my screen. I'll finish this out here. But we feel like it's a very solid tool. We've spent many years developing this with NV5 and getting things situated into where we can kind of divvy up all these tiles amongst all these different organizations throughout the project area and the state. I think NV5 stated that we're a very unique case in that we want the end users involved in the review. Most other states and other programs kind of have a state review or just a private review, and that's it. So we want to make sure that we're getting your input on the products as we go forward, because it really makes a difference in how we're handling things. So just a reminder, here's the schedule overall. I'm definitely going to be contacting everybody through the email distribution list and providing this schedule again. So definitely refer to that in my emails. The two main contacts besides myself and John, you can use if you have kind of account credentialing problems or anything with the system that you're having issues with. We have a joint email account that John, Elizabeth, and I check. It's called imagery@nc.gov. You can use that to email us as a group if maybe it gets lost in my inbox. There's Insight@NV5 is the help desk for this platform, this application. You can contact them and they can troubleshoot some things too. And that's kind of who we would contact too if we need help from the NV5 side. And talking about feedback from everyone, you may have seen I sent out the orthoimagery needs assessment through a few different channels. We've put together this survey 123 survey where we're looking for feedback from the community on just the overall products that we produce in the program, the frequency of updates, and a lot of different factors about the program that we're just trying to gauge how well we're doing with the needs of the end users. We kind of work and toil here in a black hole, and sometimes we might not know all the uses of the imagery that we're putting out there. So we just wanted to make sure we're gauging how well we're doing as we're kind of looking forward, to proposing to the board the next, what we call cycle 5. It'll be the 5th cycle through the state. This is cycle 4. We've started in 2012 with the first statewide program. And now, so as we're looking to that cycle 5, we want to make sure that are there changes we need to be making before we get into the middle of that cycle, and getting any feedback that you may have. So definitely go to the imagery page on NC1 Map. We have it linked right there. Give us your feedback. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes to fill out and should be quick and painless. If you've done it already, appreciate it. We've gotten quite a good response so far, so appreciate all the responses if you've already submitted that, but definitely distribute that to others if you can. And with that, if you haven't received your credentials and you need credentials, definitely email us. I think, John, you've already given it. You should have gotten credentials for most everyone already, right, John?
Yep.
So if you haven't received that from NV5, it should come from NV5. Definitely reach out and let us know. We'll troubleshoot and get those credentials kind of reestablished and reset. Okay, hey, Greg. Oh, yeah, well, and Don, yeah, 2010 was the first statewide project, but the cycles started in 2012, yeah.
So, Greg, I need to get out. I need to check.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, Greg, if we need to kind of delete and reestablish those and see if they come through on your end. Sometimes the emails may be getting blocked by like kind of an internal email filter or something. But we'll do some troubleshooting and get back to you. All right. Well, with that, we wanted to make it quick and painless. Definitely test it out and let us know if there's any issues or any questions. And we look forward to getting started at imagery review. It's always great to start seeing it come online and seeing the products that you're going to receive this fall. Matt, we have you on the list now too. All right, thank you. If you want to put your email address in the chat, we'll just to make sure, because I don't know if I see your email in there, Matt, in the Teams. So I probably have it somewhere, but just to make sure, if you want to send that email address, I will make sure. Mitchell. Okay, awesome. Awesome, thank you. Well, hope everybody has a good rest of the week, and looking forward to review starting next week. Let us know if there's anything we can do to assist.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you.
Don.